Hello everyone, Master Phoenix here, and welcome to another Draft League draft breakdown video. Today we'll be going over the team I drafted in the UBDL, which I assume stands for Ultra Beast Draft League, since the logo has Ultra Beasts on it. I love me some Ultra Beasts, but sadly they aren't in this game, but we may see some Ultra Beasts, depends. Yeah, anyway, I'm in a different spot just because this league is different. Because this league has restricteds and mythicals allowed. Spoiler alert, I didn't draft any mythicals, sadly, because none kind of lined up with the team comp that I was going for. Plus the ones that were available, / allowed, / I could actually draft, weren't the best in terms of lineup. So yeah, if you guys don't know, this league has allowed one, as their terms, ace Pokemon, which are basically I'm pretty sure every single restricted, like Giratina, Kyurem, even like the worst ones, they still count. And then some of the more powerful mythical Pokemon, like Arceus, Magira, Deoxys attack and regular, stuff of that sort. But then other mythical Pokemon, like Pecharunt, Zarude, Mew, stuff like Jirachi, that sort of stuff is allowed just regularly. Like, you can just do it. And then, actually, never mind. There's four technically classified legendary Pokemon, or restricted legendary Pokemon, that you can just draft regularly, which is regular Necrozma, regular Calyrex, Cosmog, and Cosmoem. As if anyone would draft Cosmog or Cosmoem, though. Everyone knows what Cosmog and Cosmoem could do. But anyway, I'm going to go over the team that I drafted for my round in the UBDL. Now, I must say beforehand, I was a fill-in. I did not sign up for this league at the beginning. I was a fill-in coach because the other coach, I think, dropped out or something. I'm not 100% sure. But I got, in technicality, first pick. But in technicality, I didn't get to pick my first Pokemon. If I did, I would probably have a Miraidon. I would have 100% had a Miraidon. But I don't. But I still got a really, really cool and busted legendary Pokemon that I first picked. I basically got to pick 3 Pokemon right off the bat, so yeah. And the restricted that I picked was Zacian Crowned. This is the Crowned, by the way. I drafted the Crowned form. But I realized that you can actually only see Crowned Zacian in battle. Like, I can't run around as a Crowned Zacian. I can only run around as the hero form, apparently. Woo! Woo! Yeah, so what can Zacian do? I mean, what can't Zacian do? Zacian did receive some nerfs this generation. Like, its attack stat got nerfed. Its ability got nerfed to activate only once per battle. Like, you can't just switch it out and switch back in and it gets an attack boost. But, yeah, it gets an ability called Intrepid Sword, which gives it an auto attack boost as soon as it enters battle. And classic Zacian stuff, it has Behemoth Blade, a really strong steel-type move. It has Stab Player Off. It gets some decent coverage moves and stuff like Wild Charge. It gets Trailblaze. It gets Sacred Sword in close combat. It's insanely fast, being only outsped by stuff like Deoxys Speed, Regieleki, Calyrex Shadow Rider. Like, almost everything in the entire league doesn't outspeed Zacian. Like, Electrodes are like another thing that only outspeeds Zacian, but it's only by 2 points, which means you're forcing the Electrode to go max speed, if they want to hit Zacian. But yeah, Zacian is fast enough where it can outspeed Fluttermane without booster speed, which, for Zacian, is really good. But anyway, Zacian, there isn't really much to talk about when it comes to Zacian. Everyone knows what Zacian can do. Like, it just kills things, potentially sets up a sword stance to kill the things that it might not have been able to before. Plus, Zacian gets some decent stats moves. It gets Quick Guard, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember much else, but Zacian is pretty good dog. He's a pretty good boy. And sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. Coincidence that he starts as soon as I talk about Zacian, bro. But yeah, I first picked Zacian. So let's move on to the next Pokemon. Now, since I had to pick 3 Pokemon at once, I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do. So obviously I wanted to get my S tier / restricted. Like an S tier restricted. I could have picked Kyogre. At that point I could have picked Koraidon. Like, I didn't want to be a Weatherball. I kind of wanted to build something that was kind of similar to my old first ever restricted league, where I ran Eternatus in Hail. So my answers into ground types are automatically covered. And the next Pokemon I picked has me covered in terms of versus ground types. I drafted the one and only Baxcalibur. Bro, Baxcalibur's tiny, bro. Why is this guy so small? Why is Bax tiny? But yeah, I've never drafted Bax. Despite my love for Baxcalibur, I've never drafted Bax before. And Baxcalibur is a really good Pokemon. Dude's immune to Will-O-Wisp with his ability Thermal Exchange, is it? I think it's called Thermal Exchange or Thermal Body or something of the sorts, where he gets an attack boost if he's hit by a Will-O-Wisp. If a fire move hits Bax, he gets an attack boost. Basically, his already insane base 145 attack stat gets boosted even more. He has pretty good bulk. Ice Dragon is a really good offensive typing. Ice is good for hitting types super effectively and is only resisted by a couple types, which Dragon can just hit. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to use Baxcalibur as well, because Bax is a Pokemon that I've been wanting to draft since the beginning of the generation. I just have barely seen much Baxcalibur action, honestly. Because the thing is normally always T1, just because of its absolute power with its signature move Glaive Rush and the ice moves that it can pull off. So most of the time people aren't going to pick it over others, but it can never go to T2 due to that. But I feel like in a restricted format, Baxcalibur can definitely go sicko mode. Because it also has really nice priority with stuff like Ice Shard. Obviously you can set up with Dragon Dance. It can boost its own speed just generally with Scale Shot. Icicle Spear is obviously with loaded dice. Glaive Rush is obviously insane. It gets Earthquake and High Horsepower with the DLC. Well, it got High Horsepower with the DLC. Which is really nice, as you don't really have to worry about having a Flying type or a Levitate Pokemon or a Terra Flying Pokemon to sit next to Baxcalibur. So yeah, I'm super excited to use Baxcalibur because I just love this Pokemon in general. It might be my second favorite pseudo-legendary behind Kommo-o. But yeah, let's move on to the next Pokemon, which is a Pokemon that I've actually drafted before. Not on cart, but I've drafted it in a Showdown League. And I enjoyed my time using this Pokemon. And generally, this Pokemon I feel like is really good in B tier, which I got it in. And honestly, it's really good with the two Pokemon that I just drafted. I chose Murkrow. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Murkrow, the pre-evolved Pokemon that takes to the sky, bro. But yeah, if you aren't VGC up to date, you might be wondering, why did you draft Murkrow? Why is Murkrow B tier? Why did you choose Murkrow? Well, Murkrow has the ability Prankster, which means it gets a +1 priority to any status move it uses, which means it can use Sunny Day and Rain Dance with +1 priority, and its best move, Tailwind, which means I can double my Pokemon's speed with +1 priority, which for Baxcalibur is amazing. For Zacian, it allows it to always outspeed, and maybe even save some EVs in my speed stat, which can always be rather nice. Plus, Murkrow has some really niche moves like Perish Song. I think it gets Fake Tears, I'm not too sure. It gets Screech, I know that. Yeah, this thing is going to be something that can always just carry some nice little tools in order for my team to get the advantage. It's obviously not the strongest Pokemon, but it gets some nice attacking moves, like it gets Snarl, it gets Foul Play. It gets Sucker Punch, which means it could probably finish off low HP targets with priority. And yeah, Murkrow, the cutie. Because Murkrow is actually kind of cute. He's a small little bird. Yeah, I love Murkrow. Alright, let's go over to the next Pokemon that I drafted, which was a while later because of me picking the first 3 Pokemon and also being first pick. But I really wanted a good Fire type. I feel like a good Fire type is necessary in draft, and I picked one which could honestly be a really insane Pokemon for the team, especially since it's a special attacker while the other 3 are physical attackers. But It's mainly for its ability to redirect attacks. I chose Volcarona. Synchro Machine! Thank you. Okay. There we go. Volcarona. I have never drafted this thing before, but I've seen it do incredible things, and I've always been annoyed facing Volcarona in draft. Volcarona has a very high base stat total. Like, I just checking this thing out, it has a 550 base stat total, which is the exact same as stuff like Urshifu, 5 lower than the Loyal Free. I didn't know Volcarona actually had such a high base stat total until recently. But it has a good speed stat, it has pretty good special bulk, it has middling defense, so its physical bulk isn't the best. But obviously it can burn things with Will-O-Wisp. And also it can go on the offensive with its incredible base 135 special attack stat, so it can fire off really strong heat waves, bug buzzes, even Giga Drains and energy balls or potential psychics. I can redirect attacks away from my allies with Rage Powder, and also it can support my team with Struggle Bug, which means special attackers got to be aware of this thing as well as physical mons. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to use Volcarona as well, because it's another Tailwind Pokemon, which means if I don't want to use Murkrow in the matchup, or I want another move on Murkrow that isn't Tailwind, I can always pop Tailwind on Volcarona. Which means Volcarona can do something with the Tailwind, which Murkrow cannot. Because Murkrow isn't the best abuser of Tailwind, but Volcarona could always abuse the Tailwind. Plus, Fire and Bug are pretty decent typing. It makes it no longer weak to ground, it helps it resist fighting attacks. Problem is, it's 4 times weak to Rock, which can most of the time lead to its downfall, but hey, Rock isn't a very common offensive type to begin with in draft, because Rock types are generally bad. But anyway, that is Volcarona. Let's go over to the next Pokemon, which is a Pokemon that I have been wanting to draft forever and ever. I've been wanting to draft this Pokemon for a while just because I love this Pokemon. An actual Pokemon, as well as also just generally in competitive. The thing with this Pokemon is Wolfie apparently thinks it's one of the worst starter Pokemon of all time, just generally competitively, due to its jack of all trades type thing where it can do something but something else can do better. I am choosing Feraligatr, which I love this guy, bro. You cannot tell me that a Gator Pokemon like this isn't cool. Like, this Pokemon is really cool. It's pure water, so it doesn't get a cool secondary effect or typing. But Feraligatr definitely has the potential to be a dangerous threat. It can set up Dragon Dance, just like Paxcalibur, which is kind of funny. But this Pokemon has Sheer Force, obviously, which means its secondary moves have no secondary effects, but they hit harder. Which means this thing could do insane damage off the get-go. Plus, this thing could do some massive damage with Terra. Like, change to a Dark type to pull off some really strong crunches. You Terra Ice, potentially, to fire off Ice Fangs. I'm pretty sure this thing gets Psychic Fangs now, which could be nice for breaking screens, as well as also just doing some stuff. This thing can also be very flexible with its items. I can run Assault Vest to help improve its pretty good bulk. I can run Choice Scarf to be able to outspeed with its middling speed stat. I can run stuff like Choice Band, I can run Life Orb for Life Orb Sheer Force. This thing is a very versatile water type that I feel like people are going to underestimate heavily. Water types are one of the essential types in my opinion in draft, so I'm happy to be able to use Feraligatr. Because Dude is my favorite Johto starter. I love all 3 Johto starters. They're probably one of the best generations of stars out there, alongside like Gen 3 and Gen 4 stars. Like, there isn't a bad Pokemon in the trio in my opinion. People hate Meganium, but I also love Meganium, but it doesn't matter. Alright, next Pokemon, which I think is the last Pokemon for this row, I think? Yeah, it is. But anyway, the next Pokemon I decided on was a Pokemon that I'm kind of hyped to use. So this next Pokemon, I've drafted a previous version of it. I've drafted the Unnovan version of this Pokemon, and it makes me even more excited to run the Hisuian form with Hisuian Zoroark. This Pokemon is one of the most badass Pokemon out there, in my opinion. Plus, also, it's a pretty good Pokemon for this team, since the only Pokemon on my team which can effectively be sussed out as a Zoroark if it comes in is Zacian, because of Intrepid Sword. But it could also not if I've already activated Intrepid Sword. But yeah, Zoroark, if you guys don't know, is an illusion Pokemon, which means if it's in the front, it copies the look of the Pokemon at the back. Which means if I lead Zoroark in something and then end with something like Zacian Volcarona as the last law, it will disguise as Volcarona, so people think it is Volcarona. But obviously, I know that it's a Zoroark. And honestly, the thing with Zoroark is it gets a lot of moves some of my other Pokemon gets. It gets Flamethrower, so I could disguise it as Volcarona, then use Flamethrower. But this thing definitely has some moves that is going to make people think, oh, that's a Zoroark 100%. Gets things like Poltergeist, it gets Shadow Balls, gets its signature move Bitter Malice, which is a ghost type move which always lowers the attack stat, which can always be useful. Plus, Zoroark, if you know my next Pokemon, I love the combo of the next Pokemon and then this Pokemon for ultimate mind games. But yeah, I love Hisuian Zoroark just because of the damage output it could potentially do. The surprise factor, I always loved using Zoroark in the GLDL Season 3. Sadly, that was one of the sets of Draft Leagues that I didn't record, so people couldn't see my incredible Zoroark. I ended up 4-0ing someone with Zoroark before, which I'm stoked about that. It's not much of a flex because it's Zoroark of all things, but I'm super excited to be using the Hisuian form since it's way cooler. It's got the unique Ghost normal typing, so say goodbye to those normal Ghost and fighting attacks, which means this thing is going to be taking away some very good typing offensively for some of my opponents. So yeah, that is Hisuian Zoroark. And let me get the last 5 Pokemon. Or is it last 4? I can't remember how many more Pokemon I have left. I have to check. Yeah, it's 4. Okay. Okay, and then I'll just put these 2 over here now. Okay. Next Pokemon I drafted is a Pokemon that I drafted this generation before, but it works so well with this team, I feel like, that I had to draft it again. I drafted Gothitelle. This thing is actually tiny, bro. Almost all of these Pokemon are Pokemon that I feel like would be way taller than they are, but Gothitelle's like small, bro. Look at it. But yeah, Gothitelle is a very good support Pokemon. It has the ability to fake out Pokemon. It can set Trick Room. It can use stuff like Thunder Wave. It can use Helping Hand. Yeah, I love pairing this Pokemon with Zoroark, just personally for the fact that it could potentially be a Gothitelle lead, but it could also be Zoroark pretending to be Gothitelle. And the thing is, if it's Gothitelle and it doesn't have Shadow Tag, you could just think, oh, it's Zoroark, but it might just be Gothitelle with either, like, competitive. Like, it could be competitive. But also this thing, the only way you'll know is if it's 100% Gothitelle is if it's Frisk. But I feel like competitive and Shadow Tag are definitely just 2 better abilities than Frisk. But I love Gothitelle in general. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to draft ever, just because of how much utility it can bring, all of the potential things it can do. It gets really nice coverage. It has decent offensive potential. It can set up Calm Minds. It can use Hypnosis. I think it also gets Gravity, but I'm not too sure. But I know one of my Pokemon gets Gravity, which means I could potentially run Gravity with this thing. But also, since Murkrow gets Perish Song, I could potentially Perish Trap people with Gothitelle, which, with my last team, I didn't have a Perish Song user, so I couldn't really do it, but I could potentially Perish Trap some people. If the matchup calls for it, I could Perish Trap some people. Plus, just the potential of Shadow Tag trapping with my team could definitely be dangerous. Since if I trap a Weather Setter, I can change the weather with Murkrow. I could trap you in with a Pokemon that would be terrible into my lead Pokemon like a Zacian. Like, if you're like terrible versus Zacian, Zacian could easily just steamroll a game from there with potential terror afterwards. But yeah, I'm super stoked to use Gothitelle again. I love Gothitelle in the GLDL Season 3, so I'm hyped to use this thing again, bro. I love Gothitelle. Anyway, let's move on to my next Pokemon, which I feel like this Pokemon is very, very underrated. And we have Shiftry, which is my Grass-type Pokemon, because I was looking at good Grass-type Pokemon. I was thinking, do I want my last B tier to be... Do I want a potential C tier Grass-type? Do I want a D tier Grass-type? I ended up going with Shiftry, because I think in D tier, which is technically the lowest tier you could possibly draft out of, it's a steal. I feel like D tier Shiftry is stupid. In my opinion, this Pokemon and Bramblegast are self-explanatory. Bramblegast is better, but Shiftry definitely has some advantages over Bramblegast. First off, it can be ran physically or specially under Tailwind. Granted though, Wind Rider does increase its physical attack stat, but Shiftry has other ways to use its other abilities. It gets Chlorophyll, so under Sun it can double its speed anyway, and then it can fire off some super strong special attacks like Solar Beam and Heat Wave. Shiftry has a Dark typing, while Bramblegast has Ghost typing, which generally Dark, I feel like, is a harder type. Sorry, no. Ghost is probably harder. But the cool thing is, Bramblegast, you could always prep your Ghost Weak Pokemon with no item to avoid Poltergeist, but with Shiftry, you can't really do that. Unless you want to neuter the power of Knockoff. But either way, it could be special, so you don't know. Because Shiftry has higher physical attack, but can be ran specially due to its pretty high special attack stat. And good special move pool. I'm just excited to use this Pokemon, bro. I had it in a BDSP league, but I kind of traded it out week 1 just because of how bad it was in BDSP. Because, obviously, this thing is terrible without Wind Rider. Wind Rider makes this Pokemon actually kind of threatening. And I can easily set Tailwind with either Volcarona or Murkrow, which means I can set that up, and also I can provide Fake Out pressure, because Shiftry also gets Fake Out. And it's not the last Fake Out user I have on this team, but Shiftry can also technically work under Tailwind due to its pretty meager speed stat of base 70. That's the thing Bramblegast had over it, it's faster, but Shiftry can also provide some stat support with stuff like Snarl. It can use Leech Seed. Sadly, it doesn't get Sleep Powder, so it can't Sleep Powder things, but Shiftry can definitely be one of those Pokemon that can definitely do some damage in certain matchups. And look at the guy. My dude looks like a superhero. And he also looks like Stump Smash from Skylanders, so you can't blame him. But anyway, that is Shiftry, which means we have 2 more Pokemon to go over. Now, the next Pokemon that I drafted was another Fake Out user, but I wanted a Fighting type, but I also wanted a type to help versus Grass types, as well as also just a Poison type. In general, I feel like Poison is a very, very underrated type in draft, especially with the ability to just ignore poisons. Plus, Poison is a pretty good neutrally hitting type, in my opinion. But anyway, we drafted Hisuian Sneasel. I would love if this thing got Unburdened, bro, so I could run Mirror Herb, Swagger, Murkrow with this thing dropping Unburdened, but Sneasel has always been a really good low-tier Pokemon, in my opinion, because it's basically Weavile, slightly slower, hits slightly less harder, but has an Intimidate immunity with Inner Focus. Plus, if anything wants to fake it out, it can't get faked out. So this thing gets some really good moves, like it gets Poison Jab, it gets Close Combat. As I said, it gets Fake Out, which means it can pull off some really nice tools. Poison Fine's a pretty good offensive type combo. The only thing is, both of them kind of get walled off by... No, wait. I'm thinking of a different type. Never mind. I'm pretty sure... There's one type out there that probably resist them both. Ghost. That was it. This thing is kind of weak to Ghost, but I think it gets Sucker Punch. I'm not too sure, but... Hisuian Sneasel can definitely be that offensive threat in the low tier that can definitely catch some people off guard. Poison's a really nice type to match up versus Fairy types, which means it's a fighting type that can actually threaten Fairy types. But yeah, I'm excited to use Hisuian Sneasel. I've used Weavile before. This is mostly the same thing except it's poison fighting and also like hits less harder, hits softer and is slower. But it still has a really good speed stat base, 115, so it's still going to be outspeeding quite a lot of Pokemon. And yeah, that is Hisuian Sneasel, which means we have the final Pokemon, And the one that I'm kind of the most excited to use out of every single one of these Pokemon, because it is the return of a Pokemon from my OG first ever draft team. Back in the days of Sword and Shield. Wink, wink. But I am going and have drafted again Rhyperior, aka my girl, Sherman. Oh no, my guy, Sherman. I'm pretty sure Sherman's a guy. Bro, Synchro Machine! Yeah! So, Rhyperior, I mainly drafted just because I wanted something to either abuse the Trick Room that Gothitelle can set up, or have an anti-Trick Room Pokemon. But Rhyperior has more than just being a really bulky Trick Room Trick Room abuser. But he can also fire off really strong ground attacks. Rock Slide is really spammable with this guy. Solid Rock allows it to tank some hits. Super effective hits, to be precise. The only problem is this thing is Rock Ground typing, which isn't the best defensive typing. Ground is pretty meager in terms of defensiveness. Rock has its benefits, but also its weaknesses. Like, this thing is 4% weak to both grass and water. But Terra can definitely fix that. And this thing has the ability Lightning Rod, which means it could redirect electric attacks away from Murkrow and Feraligatr. Or any of my Pokemon that decide to Terra out of their typing something like water or flying. Like, Zacian Water feels like a really good defensive type for it, and I can just redirect away all the electric attacks. But yeah, Rhyperior is a Pokemon that definitely has more downsides than upsides, but I feel like it can definitely do some stuff in the matchup that are ahead. And that is my team. I'm excited to use this team. It might not be the best team in the league. It might not be that threatening. I mean, it has Zacian and Baxcalibur, so I don't think it can not be threatening. With Auto Tailwind from Murkrow. But yeah, I'm excited to use this team because it's full of some Pokemon that I've been wanting to draft, have already drafted in the past and want to make use of them again. And yeah, my first week matchup will be on Wednesday, which as of recording this, I am recording this on Sunday. I don't know why I said Saturday, which means in 3 days I'll probably have that match done and I'll probably upload it, maybe. It depends, but anyway, that is the end of this draft breakdown. I absolutely love this team, so I really hope I can get some dubs in this league. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!